Right.
Now we're off. Hello, Harja, agus fáilte ag an chiad ag ranala seo de Blúiríní Béaloidis lom héin Claire Doohan agus moholiaki and Roger Kendena Jonny Dillon. Hello, Jonny.
Hello.
You join us today, folks, for our 20th episode of Blúiríní, and it's something of a bittersweet occasion as it'll actually be my last edition. Not a word from you, Jonny. I was expecting some heartfelt declaration.
You told me to look away for this first bit.
That's great. That's fine, I know where we stand. I'll be gently rising and softly calling goodnight and joy be with you all later this week as I embark on a new adventure. So to that end, Jonny and I wanted to record a final episode so that I could bid a fond farewell to our loyal listeners and also to act as corroborating evidence to confirm that we hadn't actually killed one another during the summer months. Always a fear because we have been quite quiet, haven't we?
We're not talking to each other.
No, it's true. Deathly silent in the archive. That Johnny's ego hasn't run away with him.
Well.
Always a risk. And that I wasn't serving a prison sentence in Mountjoy for murder. Always a possibility. Not yet. On the contrary, we end this particular chapter of Blúiríní as firm friends, as my legally binding extraction contract states, and aim to go out on a jovial note as we look back on some of our own favourite clips from past episodes, as well as kind of reminiscing a little bit more about some of our personal highlights from the archive here that you might not know about yet and might be interested in exploring further. But fear not, as Blúiríní will continue, and Jonny will say a bit more about that probably towards the end.
Yeah, we'll work something out.
Perfect. So let's crack on. And did you want to start with one of your favourite pieces, Jonny?
Apart from saying that you're now my arch nemesis, Claire.
Yes, well, I can't take it anymore, Jonny. 3.5 years.
I know.
I'm only human.
I've been doing this for 2 years now, which is amazing, really.
April 2017, isn't it?
April 2017, man. So yeah.
It's gone very quickly,
but
has. I've loved every minute.
Likewise. It would be strange to do a new one, but we'll have to work out some way to maybe interview people or grab willing victims or something like that. But we'll work it out.
We have such a great team here and so many interesting people who come to visit. So maybe you want some feedback from loyal listeners as to what...
Yeah, that'd be a good idea, actually. Yes, indeed. That'd be good. Send forth your angry letters.
Indeed, about what you might be interested in, and plague Jonny with all forms of suggestions.
And then look forward to 5-hour episodes of me rambling incoherently without anyone to say for the sake of completeness, or let's organise
ourselves. A bit of alliteration. Yeah.
Probably very little alliteration going on now.
But no, you should, because it's such a lovely forum and you're so good at it.
Kind of life without parole from me here, I'm afraid, Claire.
Compliment now.
Thanks.
But yeah, you should.
No, we'll definitely have to keep, I don't know, spreading the gospel, as it were, somehow. And
very much
I will. But we'll come back and kind of work it out eventually, however that happens. We'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, it is important to note that we are now arch nemesis and that our legal teams are in a bitter dispute.
Yes, it's
true.
About
dismantling the Blúiríní estate.
I know it's going to be who'll get the children.
Yeah, who's going to inherit
who gets Delargy, who gets O'Sullivan.
Let's not even have this conversation, Claire.
Let's just get on with it.
Yeah. So for the next however long, we're gonna rant about some of the kind of highlights, bits that we enjoyed. Because I think when I first wanted to kind of come up with the idea to do this, we wanted basically to dig through some of the material in the archive that maybe people don't always get to hear. It's either researchers coming in, or you have the public who are coming in to kind of consult the manuscripts or use the sound recordings. But the benefit, I suppose, of having material online now is that we can share with such a broad audience, and didn't expect as well how far afield it would go for listeners in kind of places all over.
It's been so surprising. Australia, New Zealand,
US,
Vladimir in Russia.
Poor Vlad is a loyal and keen listener.
I could be a concubine for a Russian oligarch.
You could be doing well. So could I, by the way.
Be kept in the style to which I've grown accustomed.
Yeah, Fabergé eggs, etc. So it would be so it's kind of, especially the deal, because a lot of the time when you look for material relating to Irish folklore, to put it mildly, I suppose, you can get some material which is subpar, I would say, and I'll say no more.
Indeed,
because this is but I don't know, I think we had a pretty good run at it so far, talking about from different aspects of tradition, from material culture to more kind of vernacular architecture and supernatural aspects and so on. So I hope people have enjoyed this series, and then also that they'll enjoy the next series, however it manifests. But yes, what we have today is even a list of a selection of some of the audio that we enjoyed.
That we've played over the kind of the 20 or the 19 episodes, and then we've chosen our favourite ones.
Yeah, which is impossible also. I noticed as I was going through to try and pick your kind of favourite ones is really difficult. But do you want to start with one of yours?
Oh, shall I start with one of mine? Okay. could we do... I loved the Banks of the Roses.
I also absolutely love this.
Was that Mary Egan?
No, her name is what is her name? Mrs. Malachny.
Oh, sorry, yes.
But she's in Tipperary.
Yes, I love this one. But if we'll play it and then we'll ramble about it afterwards.
Waffle about it. Okay, Here we go.
Yeah.
If ever I get married, it will be in the month of May, when the fields they are green and the meadows they'll be gay. For me and my true love to roll, sport and play, all alone by the banks of the roses. On the banks of the roses, where me and my love sat down, I pulled out me German flute for to play me love a tune. And in the middle of the tune, she smiled and she said, "Oh, Jonny, lovely Jonny, do not leave me. Jonny, lovely Jonny, you have my poor heart won. You are my evening's bright star and the morning's early sun. And if I do not gain you the strength that I will run all alone by the banks of the roses. Indeed, I am no drunk." Stop it. Oh, I said that one.
There you are now.
Indeed, I am no drunkard, and very well it's known I can drink when I like, love or leave it alone. And if your mother doesn't like me, she can keep you at home, and instead I look out for another. Whiskey is a cordial that I do not like at all. The reason I don't like it, the measure is too small. I would like a jug of ale that would go around us all, and I'd like to see me darling drinking brandy. Indeed, I am no drunkard, and very well it's known I can drink if I like, love or leave it alone. And if your parents they don't like you, they can keep you at home, and instead I look out for another. These parents they got married, as we hear the people say. They may take another road on the very next day. May kind Providence direct them and guide them the right way, and adieu to the banks of the roses. I think that's it.
That's grand now. That's lovely now.
Yeah, sure.
They're into
Say
that.
that now again.
Amazing. No, Claire, it's a fine choice. I think.
Yes, I've
I can
completely
relate
forgotten
to.
about
No, I
the
agree.
Jonny.
In fact, I think of what.
No.
So you wanted to elaborate on why you like that song?
I completely, that's hilarious. We laughed about this the last time because
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know. Well, no, she
Look,
obviously cares more for her Jonny than I care for mine.
Yes, indeed.
No, why I like this was that little bit at the end was throughout. She can have either she coughs or you hear the car in the background, or that little moment at the end where she says, "That's
grand now."
That's it now.
And
And then
also,
the woman says, "That's grand now."
where her sisters or her friends were there with her,
Supporting her.
They come in at that little bit and they're singing with her, and then she loses the run of it and has to hit the stop machine and stop and start. It's a lovely little picture of collecting.
But it just shows me so much of why the context of our kind of folklore collection is important. Like what shapes the creation of a piece of folklore, how it's collected, why it's offered, how it's offered. But it's this kind of humility at the end. Because I always kind of sense that sometimes when speaking to people and even listening to recordings, I don't know if you'd agree, that they almost think, "Oh, I have nothing important to tell you, like what I have isn't valuable."
Yeah.
And they always sense that, just because it's not written down or because it's not in state archives, that it's somehow less valuable.
I wouldn't know anything about that now. This sort of thing.
This is it, and they always seem so humble, and I love that the collection here represents this kind of state endorsed opinion that kind of rural culture and urban culture, kind of folklore matters, that it is important and that it should have been saved and that it should continue to be saved. So I just love that little moment where
100%.
she is Yeah.
No, it's lovely. It's so nice, and it's interesting as well, even to think of the I don't know what the context of that recording is, because it seems it's the woman who's singing. It seems as though it's a kind of quite an ad hoc scenario, that it's not one of the department's kind of collectors who are out there who are collecting it. I think it's one of these women who are with her singing. But just the impact of recording the item, how it changes the versions of it, the medium, how the performance can be kind of impacted by the medium or by the recording itself. But what you were saying there about the recognition of the ordinary culture, of the ordinary kind of, I'm clawing the air with my fingers here, ordinary people. It is such an important thing, and to think of the I suppose, to go even to back to the likes of Delargy, who've been establishing the place, their whole view that it isn't the state archive, the formal official record, the legal records, the deeds, the court records, the stamped kind of records of the state and the mercantile kind of administrative bureaucratic world or whatever. It's the unofficial, the communal, the anonymous, traditional. That's the Volksgeist, the genius of the people is in there. That's where the authenticity is derived from, not from the kind of the state records.
Hierarchy.
This is like recently when for going through in the National Archives, I was chatting to you about this. There are files from the Department of the Taoiseach on the Folklore Commissions being set up in the National Archives, and in one of them there's a letter from Delargy to De Valera when he's about to set up the Folklore Commission, and he realises that there's a chance that De Valera is going to put some civil servants on the board of the commission because the government wants some degree of oversight over what Delargy's doing. Yes. And he writes this scathing, well, not quite scathing, but a very strongly worded letter to the Taoiseach, to the Prime Minister of the day, saying that he feels as though he must put down on paper that the state cannot create a spiritual movement.
Oh, interesting.
And that's what he sees the kind of the Folklore Commission as. He keeps
dichotomy?
talking about spiritual patriotism and the spiritual culture of the people and all this kind of stuff, even in the material culture, that it's this kind of, I suppose, like you're saying, that it's like a national or state-sponsored community archive approach to. This is what's important. The informal, unofficial culture of the people is in a way more indicative of the official culture of the people than the so-called stamped, bureaucratic, transactional kind of stuff.
I agree, and this was one of the things, and I actually read this over the weekend. It just came up on Twitter that someone had shared it. It was an article about an event at home where I'm from, and we would know kind of the land agitation period would have been very kind of prevalent in Donegal in the 1800s, and we had a notable priest, Father McFadden, who we would all grow up having known as a folk hero, really, who defended the tenants' rights and was spent time in prison for it. But one of the great kind of events, if you like, that's kind of stamped in our memory is that it was attempted to arrest him one day after Mass, and that the townspeople actually turned on the Inspector Martin and killed him. That's how. See? Don't mess with
you get the point. I get it. You only do this last thing and then you're gone.
But
we've made it this far.
We've made it this far. But it's a story that we grow up with, and it's almost just part of our culture that, oh yes, in Sirotmore and Marin Wartina, and you don't even stop to think about it anymore. And then I was reading this article in the Times that they'd obviously written about the history of this event and kind of what it represented, and they had used quotes from contemporary papers. And it's this idea of like Bunbeg, which would have been near the kind of one of the townlands near to where it happened. But they described it as being, what was it? It was Bunbeg was not easily accessible. It was some 20 miles from civilization or whatever this line was. And it's always this idea of reinforcing the peasantry and that so many miles from civilization, as if they were some kind of primitive tribes people out here with nothing to offer.
Is this a Donegal thing I hear, guys?
No, I think so many people would... so many rural Irish would agree with this, and also kind of these stereotypes that urban Ireland also probably has to struggle with. But it was just this idea that civilization doesn't reside there. And it really always annoyed me. And now I'm so appreciative, I think, when you see the UNESCO recognition that the collection has gotten, and you see more and more historians coming to visit us and different fields of expertise, archaeologists, linguists, really coming to realise how important the collection we have here is and the material that it offers. So for me, that's been one of the joys of my time here, just to see that real development. It's
amazing. It's not. I can't recall now. It's Búiríní, I think, in his he has his article Irish Folklore Commission Achievement and Legacy in Béaloidis, 1977 to 79.
And what's the page?
What is the page? Well, I read it as a pamphlet, so it started on the page. Oh God! You can get it on JSTOR.
You can.
Because the Béaloidis journal is on there, and it's Irish Folklore Commission Achievement and Legacy. But in that, he talks about that, as you were saying, the kind of the importance that began to be placed on the civilization or the awareness that dawned basically on scholars in Europe in the 19th and 20th centuries that there resided in the ordinary people this kind of great civilization, basically, that we could kind of trace back across Europe, that indicated our different roots and so on. But Adolf Mahr, who was the director of the National Museum into the 20s into the 30s, he had a huge impact in that as well. I remember there's some quote from him. He instituted or initiated an exhibition on traditional clothing, on the rural kind of dress of the peasantry or something like that. And I remember reading, this is one of those terrible kind of things you just have floating in your head, not attached to anything, but either Delargy or someone, or maybe Maher himself, talking about trying to kind of create the realization that there was a repository of kind of cultural merit to be found in the ordinary people, basically. And what seems now as a given to us, but trying at the time to change the perspective on
that mentality,
where to look, and what is of importance, and to realize even that the kind of the content, the ordinary utensils in the home, or the layout of the fireplace, or the construction of the house, or all these things, that there's a whole cosmos there that's to be understood, or whatever.
Because what is general knowledge to one generation is not necessarily general knowledge to another.
Absolutely.
So those who would assume, why are you
that is
asking?
Absolutely the case.
Isn't it? Like,
nowadays,
well, why are you asking me about, what we do at St. Bridget's night, or blah blah blah? But in 100 years,
I know.
That'll be different. So this is why it's important. So I'm glad that maybe some of them didn't get to see it in their lifetime, but that those who now get to see that their materials are being used, I think it's great for education.
Yeah.
So do you have another favourite piece?
Yeah, this is a piece that just breaks my heart. This woman, Lisanne Fitzpatrick, we played this in the previous episode on trees, and she's talking about a fairy tree on her father's land, and it was the idea that as a quick kind of recap, I suppose, that there are certain trees, say a tree in the middle of a field, especially a kind of a hawthorn tree or a hawthorn bush or whatever, that looked like it wasn't planted by a human hand, basically. And trees like this were often kind of, I suppose there was a certain, they were treated with a certain reverence or suspicion, for want of a better word, that they were a kind of an abode of supernatural spirits, of the fairies, basically. Not the Tinkerbell kind of Victorian literary fairies, but the nature spirits who kind of live around us and can cause us all sorts of hassle if we mess with them. So you don't cut these trees down. And this tape recording, we closed the last episode with it. So there's a piece of music by Richard Moult, piano music afterwards, which is kind of attached to this piece. But she's talking about, I think, the pressure that her father came under to kind of cut it down. And they're talking about kind of, you're nothing but a silly old man and all sort of stuff. But he's like, no, that's an old tree. And so it's kind of, it's, I suppose, in a way, for me, symbolised the idea of the person who's standing for tradition in when
against
surrounded by its opposites. Do you know what I mean? So I'll play Lisanne Fitzpatrick.
See, we have, Tom in our house, my father had a great big tree, and it's an awful big tree. And it's an apple tree. And of course, it interfered with my father. Of course, I suppose they have it took out of the field where it is now, because the corn field, it was in. My father always ploughed and everything around, and people used to say, "You're a foolish old man. What do you think you are? Why don't you throw that tree down and have all that space?" No, says my father. That tree is there in our old generation, and that's a real old tree, he said. And that's a fairy tree, he says, and I would not touch it. My father wouldn't touch the tree. No, he wouldn't let you go near an apple on it.
Really?
The poor old...
There was an apple
I wouldn't let an apple off it for anything. Oh, no, my father wouldn't have anyone touch an apple off it.
Now, it's
They'd packed out with apples to be, and still we wouldn't touch them. The cows, we let them into the field. They would eat the apples off it, but we wouldn't touch them, no. Touch nothing belonging to a fairy, you're not supposed to.
And were there any other trees, like...
No, there was only just one big tree in the middle of the field, and it was a corn field, he used to sow it, till it and all, and everyone was at him. Why did he not cut down that tree and not have that tree there? And my father said, no, as long as my generation is alive. You know, I shouldn't meddle with them. They don't meddle with you, and you shouldn't meddle with them. Oh, there's any amount of fairies in the country. We used to go at night to hear them. Yeah.
Really? How would you hear?
To hear them. You hear them in the field singing. They sing to themselves, you see, in the field. We used to go to, our place was all a big crossroads, and we used to all go out and stand over the wall, and they said, listen, we'd say, Listen to you, hear them. And they psalm it to themselves there for all that they were. And people often seen them coming home at night from dances and all, crossing the road and all. Now, at about 12 o'clock now at night, that's why you'd see them crossing the road. Crossing from one field into another.
Where do they go during the daytime?
Oh, they stay in the rat.
Yeah.
You know, they have rats. Yeah, they would tree, the rats in the tree then, you know, they could stay there. I believe they're lovely little women. That's what I believe. I believe they're lovely little ones.
And are they all women?
They're all women. Little fairy women. So that's why the little child went over the place. She thought they were children like herself. They were fairies. All of that. There was any more the fairies in the country. That's why we looked outside the door and they were afraid of the fairies. Because we'd hear them singing. We go out in our own crossroad, and the lads would be going out for the jeeping in their house. They call it Cayley in here, we call it Quachine in the country. And it'd be about 12 o'clock in the door. They'd say, come out here, Lisanne and Jonny, come out here to hear this going on. And we'd hear it, it was lovely. Yeah, Jonny needs to come out. We can like us if we told them that. Fairy singing on the bridge, we thought there was, and it wasn't just where she was on the field, we thought it was on the bridge.
I'm not crying, you're crying, Jonny.
Now, that was Lisanne Fitzpatrick.
I love though, do you know what really struck me?
And
like,
Richard Moult, Star-Filled Tree, I think it was called, his piece of music. You can find his music starred-desert.com. Lovely music, you know, download it from there.
Right. Sorry, that's okay. I won't miss you interjecting.
And another thing I just want to say actually, before we carry on. No, I realised actually we were laughing there while I was playing because it gets slightly kind of, there's an air of miserabilism. With the whole, the sadness, the sorrow of the thing. Poignancy is probably better to use. And we're not trying to make this an entirely poignant music.
No, this is a joyful one. We've had such a laugh. So
we have.
And these are our favourite bits.
They are. Which it's interesting to notice that, well, that one, it breaks my heart the way she's kind of, her how would you call it? She just goes off and the collector's trying to ask her questions. What sort of singing? And she's just paying no heed and she's just remembering, and she's talking about her siblings, talking about her father,
it's
talking
the father,
about
though. That's what gets me. Like she uses this story as it's clearly a story that reinforces an image of her father, for her, like a steadfast presence in her life, who was. Well, maybe this is me being romantic,
no.
But as you imagine, like girls always think of many of their fathers as well, not many. They only have the one, but many girls think of their fathers as being, you know, the bulwark of the family and the patriarch, the one who's going to be solid and secure and a safe pair of hands. And clearly she loved him very much. And I think the story helps paint that image in her head.
Yeah, and even just the sense of not letting that tree, that kind of force be cut down, and not letting it be uprooted or cast asunder or just cast aside, and you know what I mean. And the same goes for, as you can hear her talking about her father, and then in a broader sense for ourselves, our own forebears, our own mothers and fathers, or where we come from, to not kind of, what is it, kind of give in to the, I don't know, the ignorance of the modern age in so many ways, to say, well, what's the use in that? Cut that down, or to view things forwards, in economic terms, or all this sort of kind of nonsense, basically. So to not do those things and not to uproot ourselves and not become lost and hack out that which is good grief.
You know, like I know, pardon the pun, but like you do need roots, I think, to ground you, especially in the fast moving world that we live in, where there's pressure and there's stress, and you need to kind of be succeeding and be seen to be succeeding in every aspect of life. Whereas these things ground you, and you realize actually this is what's important. You know, everything else 100%. Is transitory. You know, when I go in the box, people are going to remember like what kind of person you were. You know,
A tyrant, Claire. A tyrant.
Might not even get the box. They might just fling me into the ocean.
Yeah.
But
you
roots
make
are
a good point.
important. Roots are important.
If we haven't emphasised that, I suppose, over the last.
I know you're probably
20 years we're often away.
preaching to the choir now, folks. But
it is so important.
Yeah, it's true.
That we not just hold fast, but also So anyway.
Perfect. So that is that gospel. Respect your roots. So I was going to speak next about one of the collections that people might not know much about, but I just wanted to say something or speak to it just so that you could maybe explore it a bit more. Is we have a wonderful collection of sketchbooks here in the archive by the artist Simon Coleman, and you may have come across this. We did a blog post on it a few months ago on the Cultural Heritage Collections blog with UCD Library, with the great team in Special Collections and UCD Archives and UCD Digital Library. But Simon Coleman was a resident artist, if you like, with the commission. He was from County Meath, a member of the RHA, a really gifted artist if you look at any of his work, his portraits and his paintings. And he was hired by Delargy, the great visionary that we have come to know and love, in 1949 for 2 weeks, and then also in 1959, so 10 years later, for 3 months and 2 weeks. So in 1949, Delargy hired him to travel to Donegal for a fortnight with the full-time collector Sean O'Hoy, and basically he was to do what Sean was doing. What Sean was collecting in words, he was to collect and represent in images. So he was visually documenting Irish folklore. So while Sean would be meeting informants and speaking, recording, transcribing their recollections, their narratives and their kind of social history, Simon would be travelling alongside him, either painting sketches or portraits of the informants or visually documenting the material culture in the homes. So we have these beautiful sketches of people, places, landscapes, tools, utensils, house interiors, topographical features, kind of archaeological sites. And we have this for Donegal, various townlands in Galway. He spent 3 months in Galway with Kieran Barrett in 1959, from January to March, April, and then he would have gone back for 2 weeks later in the year and spent time with Princess de Burke, I believe, and they would have travelled a bit more of Galway and Clare. But all of these sketchbooks, there are 6 of them in total, they've all been digitised and they are available online on doohas.ie to view. So if you were to go on to doohas.ie and search for Coleman, you will, I think 3 come up, but if you click on one of them and then click on Simon's name, all 190 will come up.
I think the way that I was explaining this at talk last night, and it's kind of counterintuitive on the site. When you go onto doohas.ie, you'll see the collections, but there's a kind of search bar, but you have to hold fast against your own Googleism, where you just enter the query in the search bar. There's also a field at the top of the page referring to people. And if you go to that, you can enter the forename and surname of the individual that you're looking for, and that will tag the profile of the individual. So if you write Coleman in the surname of people, it'll give you all of his material in the photographic collection.
Perfect. Which is what you want.
Which you won't necessarily get for. I'm not sure whether this is the case if you just do a text search across the site.
But I think it's the algorithm. It works, but it's just when you're looking for that specific kind of items.
But the material is incredible. It's so beautiful.
Oh, and it's so
painstakingly hand done.
It is. He was a real draftsman, I have to say. He would have become known to Delargy, I imagine, through Hyde, because he did the Council of State portrait for President Hyde at the time, and he's just so deft and kind of articulate, if you can, in visual terms, at kind of creating or capturing the emotions on people's faces, and then just the detail in kind of house interiors or
thatching processes, or
he goes through processes like farming processes and thatching processes and writes out the minutiae of how it's done. And even he has these wonderful sketches of men carrying creel wicker baskets on their backs, carrying turf. And he has some from Donegal, but then he also has them from Galway and shows how they're different. So he is essentially capturing variations as Sean O'Hoy or Kieran Barrett would be doing. So I'd recommend the Simon Coleman collection to look it up, because he kind of captures another snapshot of that time in these regions. But what I liked in sorry Jonny, I'm speaking. On Friday the 10th of April 1959, his very last day with the with the commission as a field worker, so to speak. He writes in his diary, "Alas and alack." I love that. Who writes this now? Alas and alack. "This is the last day of my 3-month stay in the west of Ireland. What an enriching time it has been, though fraught with the inevitable vicissitudes. Lovely sunlight days and sometimes dark, wild and stormy ones too. Flying along through the roadways of the west, listening to Kieran's irrepressible and illuminating patter. I think I'll remember all these experiences for the rest of my earthly days. I feel I've been immersed in a great wave that has impregnated my whole mind and being."
Amazing. I was going to say before you so rudely cut me off. Oka Campbell is another one who did
Yes.
incredible sketches. In 1930, he came over at Delargy's behest for the Irish Folklore Institute, doing sketches of interiors, and but the idea, even at that time through the 20s and 30s, and then as if the commission really kind of carried it out with Coleman, that would be a valid archival record.
Yes.
A sketch, of the again, it's the type of record that you won't find kind of carried out or collected to the same degree in a formal archive, in a state archive. Sketches of a man with carrying something, and what does that mean? But it's the type of questions that,
Or a sketch of 4 walking sticks.
yeah, and then the names for them, or the
Yeah.
names for different parts of it, or something like that. So I was reading through the Delargy's diaries recently, and in 1930, I think there's a reference to he had hoped that a certain artist would go and, as Coleman did, go accompany kind of collectors on their tour to sketch and so on. I was laughing. I won't say the artist's name, but he went. He sent this fellow out to some part of Galway. He came back with nothing because he drank so much.
Oh no!
Yeah, which he admitted, and he said, he's like, "Oh, good grief."
Pitfall.
Pitfalls indeed, yeah. But what an amazing the kind of the foresight to go out and collect this material, and
In
then
1949, just to have that.
it's incredible.
Vision.
It's incredible, and even to collect again ordinary scenes and ordinary accounts, and then with the passage of time they become utterly extraordinary, and the care and detail that went into them is just. It's astounding.
It's
amazing.
So you're very welcome. Everything has been digitized, so it's online, so you can access it from anywhere in the world. And the sketchbooks themselves are here in the archive. They're quite fragile now, so we usually prefer that you look at the digital images if you were to come in. But I'd recommend you look at them because they're just incredible and really emblematic of a great craftsmanship that has been lost, like this beautiful wicker work and thatch work. So yeah, the Simon Coleman collection. One of my favourite things.
Do you want to continue ranting away uninterrupted, or do you want to go to more audio?
Should we do an audio?
Yeah.
You never give me free reign like this,
So
Jonny.
let's move on.
So
swiftly.
it's taken
No,
me.
it's time. What do you want to hear? What sort of thing?
Did you want to do one of your favourite pieces now, or like?
No, I had the last one, so it's your turn.
Oh right, okay. I was going to go with the humorous one that we did for the moon, and it was By the Light of the Silvery Moon, which is basically a caveat emptor warning for all men and women looking for spouses, just to have a good old try before you buy.
Indeed.
It was down in Killalay in the merry month of May, when the roses and the heather was in bloom. A fair lady passed me by, and she winked with her right eye, by the bright silvery light of the moon. 'Twas a case of love at sight, but to us it was delight. We got cuddled up together very soon. We got married straight away in the church at Killalay, by the bright silvery light of the moon. But she squandered all my dough, to our home we had to go. Oh, what a place to spend the honeymoon, with no fire in the grate, only looking at the plate, by the bright silvery light of the moon. But when we went to bed, it is then I got in dread, for I knew that I was going far too soon. For 'twas there upon a chair I see her golden hair, by the bright silvery light of the moon. But the worst was yet in store, for when she began to snore, she nearly pulled the blanket round the room, and 'twas there upon a peg I see her wooden leg by the bright silvery light of the moon. Now, young fellas, if you meet a fair lady down the street, try her well before you plan your honeymoon. Pull her leg and pull her hair, and make sure that she's all there by the bright silvery light of the moon.
So there you go, just a word of caution.
Indeed, watch out, be
Exactly.
careful now. Tom Lennon, I think I said Junior Green, but another Clareman, Tom Lennon, who Tom Munley collected from. But yeah, amazing.
It is. It's very. I do quite like it for its humour. And he's got a lovely voice. I love listening to him.
He does. And there's another. There's a whole kind of release of his material was released on 2 tapes or 4 tapes. The Mount Callan Garland, but it's been re-released recently, the book and CD as well. If people want to find a copy of that, his songs are fantastic.
So do you want to play one of your favourites?
Yes, I'm trying to think here which, because I have a few. Well, I'll go another humorous song. I love this. This is from a colleague of ours, a late colleague of ours, Finbar Boyle, who would have worked in the Sound Archive back in the day, and he's singing at a some sort of song gathering, basically. But it's on Oni's Bar, so this is the raid on Oni's Bar, which describes in great detail the police as they come and try and stop the festivities at this, people being served after hours at this bar, basically.
I'll sing it just on condition that the door is kept shut and that one of the participants is kept out while I'm singing it. One evening I laid down to Crow's 3 days trade to a bar that is famous for doing a late trade. In spirits and beer and in red lemonade among company that's kindly and jovial. The man from Kinally put me at me ease and he sat me down cosy before a great blaze. And he filled me a pint and a half and that pleased, and another wee drop came from Oni. For an hour and a half I drank liquor so rare you would think it was brewed by the gods, I declare. Out of nectar and honey and lotuses fair, sure it only came over the border. And at 11:30 we sadly prepared to return to our lodgings back where we were reared. We packed up our bags, we were filled with dull cares, and then only put in a big order. And the tipplers relaxed and returned to their drinks, rejoicing that now they need not feel the pinch. Peter Short finished off the last 1/8 of an inch, he was sucking since 7:20. And the music began in an old-fashioned style, you would travel to hear it for many a mile. I was drinking and laughing away all the while, sure I thought I was dead and in heaven. There was lads there from Newry, the Rock and the Hack, some that came from Belfast and that never went back, and more lived convenient to Carroll the Black, and every man Jack's willing porter. There was some came from Hill Street and more from the Quay, some cross Midland patriots turning away. In a scheme done a mine they were all in array, but each man kept himself in good order. Now a dirty big guard that was out in the street on passing the door heard the music so sweet, and he kicked up his heels and he better a treat to summon up 2 of his cronies. They quickly returned to the scene of the crime, and they called on the company to fight or resign. Let them in, cried Pat Murphy, we'll only be fined on the night that the guards raided Oni's. Says the sergeant on entering, what's this I see, and why is so many all out on the spree? Can it be that the country at long last is free? Our conduct it is most nefarious. Sure, Sergeant, it's not free, then no needed say. If you wish to drink beer like the rest, you must pay. We'll stay here if we like till the clear light of day. Sure, you know in Dundalk we're gregarious. And the guards that went round and they took all our names and they struggled to spell with their feeble wee brains. And of some names in Irish they made a great hymns and more they abandoned forever. To the roof the Mulhollans they quickly did climb, to the gators from afar at the scene of the crime. And to watch the old guards making good overtime when they gather the lads all together. May the devil hoist them high up on a ramp, the sergeant, the guard, and the lad with the lamp. The dirty men, miserable poxy low tramps from the bogs that was dragged up so lowly. May they always see suffering, sorrow and pain. May their boots never fit, may their belts never strain. If they interrupt such a grand evening again as the night of the first raid at Oni. That their motors may stand, that their noses may run, that their necks once so red may turn green in the sun, that their teeth may turn black and fall out one by one, that starvation may make them grow bony, that their ashes may fester and drop to their heels, that their last day and minutes be tempered with squeals, that they may dance forever the jigs and the reels with the devil for raiding poor Oni.
Up from the bar. Lovely.
Amazing.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, what a voice and what a witty, hilarious
It's a great
chap.
story, you know. You listen to songs nowadays, and I'm a fan of Rihanna and etc.
Oh,
etc. as
get
much as
away
the next
from me,
person.
Claire.
But like in terms of narrative stories, they're not great, are they? Whereas these stories, they really
No, they're
paint a
not.
picture.
They do. Finbar, we met him before he died, and he was singing the praises of the podcast as well, which was lovely. So nice to hear. Yeah.
That's so nice.
Yeah, yeah. But we were laughing there while I was playing because I was comparing our notes when I came into this room this morning. I laughed because it's been so long since we've done one of these. And what do I see in the table before me? Claire's notes, neatly arranged, photocopied articles, everything symmetrically done, slightly frightening. And what do I have? A blank sheet of paper with Blúiríní 20 written on it. And
Oh, well, that's a start. Do you remember when our
I have
first
a pencil.
episode? When I used to have the colour.
Yeah, you had colour for the sake of listeners here who weren't privy to the visual overload that was sharing a desk with there. Yeah, you had colour coded cards. That wasn't even notes. It was like the entire extract was written page numbers.
Do you know what I think is funny?
No. It's insane. It's terrifying. But it's also amazing, and it's. I mean, well, what are we going to do, Claire?
But
when your organisational capacity disappears, we're going to flail into. It's going to be this. It's going to be this blank sheets of paper, and I'm going to be like, you know, and they won't see that it's blank, but it's going to be blank.
But I think though that's your strength, Jonny. Whereas you can paint just off the cuff. I need to have the tools in front of me.
Just no. Feel free to just keep going with that.
Ramble.
Yeah.
But it's so like I often think I almost hate listening back to our early ones because you can tell the difference.
How bad you are as a presenter.
Well, yes, that goes without saying. But you can see the journey we've been on because it is like reading the news.
You've grown, Claire.
I've been on a journey, Jonny. I really should win this episode of Ireland's Got Talent. But it is like we're so closed off in a way in the first episode.
Do you think?
And we sound
really
so young.
Do we really? Yeah.
Yeah, and just it's almost
Naive,
like the newsreader.
now we're jaded.
Good evening, folks,
Old,
and welcome to episode 1. Of
Is it like that? Yeah.
Yeah, very much. So we're
That's
very
hilarious.
stilted. So we've really come
Stiff.
a long way. Yes. For better or for worse, we've let loose.
We have.
Yes.
There are. Well, you for one, although you're still frighteningly organised, you have no colour-coded cards.
I know.
Which was it was a bit terrifying, Claire. Now, in fairness.
It's true.
It was amazing, but
I've improved in my level of relaxation.
you have. Well, now you have. Bless you. Now, what were we going on about there? Okay,
Please
that
refer
was,
to your list there.
Oh yeah, I'll just look at my blank sheet of paper here. Finbar Boyle, well, Lord rest him, amazing character. But to talk about, there's another piece, since we're gone mad here with recordings. There's another piece I wanted to play. It's hard to there's so much material. Even trying to pick audio for each of these episodes has been so difficult out of the 12,000 hours of stuff that we have.
God knows I've been listening to you complaining.
Well, but there's a nice piece that I want to play here that I don't know if this quite is conveyed to anyone except ourselves, I suppose, or to someone listening. But the role of the collector in as far as the kind of interviewing techniques that are required by the folklorist when collecting, which can often be a kind of strange bit of a black art with someone that you're in their house or in a it could be in all sorts of strange environments where you're collecting with someone. And although you're trying to be as kind of relaxed and informal in a way as possible, when the recording starts, there's a kind of shift really where you're not having a conversation, an informal, relaxed conversation, but it's trying to make it relaxed, but you're aware that it's for being recorded for posterity, basically. So it takes a huge amount of energy to be kind of sitting there, making sure that you're not even interjecting with little things like and these things, and so you're kind of full attention to the person, trying to steer it, where they're going, trying to see where it's going to go next, how do you get the most out of the person, how do you keep it running, and all sorts. But there's a little piece from this recording from 1971 with Leo Corduff, another great collector who worked with the Commission in the Sound Archive here as well, and he's talking. We played this in the episode regarding St. Bridget and the cult to her, and this is Paddy Plunkett. He's recording from Kinnegad at Westmeath in 1971, and he's talking about the Bridget's crosses. But the reason that I like this piece is that your man Plunkett is kind of coming forward with these. He's chatting a bit about the crosses, and Leo was kind of prompting him. That's adorable. That's the last episode. What is
that's a bit of context for
Indeed,
us.
yeah,
It's the middle of the working day here, folks.
Exactly. So he's kind of prodding him slightly, whatever, and then at one point he just holds a slight pause for where he just doesn't fill the blank, basically, and that's something I remember having to learn to do in a collecting situation where you just sit in the silence sometimes with someone, and then a whole bunch of material will start to come again. Whereas in a normal conversation, you wouldn't do that with someone. You wouldn't necessarily just.
Well, no, you never give me silence
So,
in
which
order
brings
to
to my next
interject.
point. So, do you know what I mean? It's this kind
it's
of.
so true. There's power in silence.
And in the
You
collecting
just
thing,
need to learn it.
and so it can sometimes feel like a strange,
Awkwardness.
counterintuitive kind of thing. But you just now he only does it for about a second. But I just noticed it as and then he just the guy that he's interviewing comes out with this a little bit. So this is Leo Corduff. If Claire could just stop interrupting me, sure.
Oh yeah, well I make the St. Bridget's cross for February, St. Bridget's Day. You can collect the rushes, and it's not too hard. You show it once, you know how to do it always.
Well, did they have any prayers or any sort of a ceremony at all on St. Bridget's night?
Not that I know of now in the olden days. No, just St. Bridget's cross was made and hung up on the wall for the year.
And after the year, what would they do?
Well, it's withered, it's nearly gone again. The year is up, you see. You make a fresh one then again the following St. Bridget's Day.
From rushes?
Oh, they're made from rushes, yes. Pure rushes. There's supposed to be that St. Bridget hadn't a cross when she was teaching some of the pagans about the true faith, and she had no cross, a wooden cross or iron cross or whatever it be at the time, and she took up the rushes and she formed this, and it's in the shape of a cross almost. Yes. You see, that's the tradition attached to it.
Now, did you catch that?
I did.
Just about.
Yes, I had to, but I kind of said to Jonny I didn't catch it the first time we listened to it. But when I concentrate, you do get that moment where he can just.
It's just that
holds.
tiny bit he just holds off, but
you're kind of creating, aren't you? Like as the collector, you are in this relationship with your informant, and it's this context that you're both creating something together. So, and it's important to kind of appreciate the impact that one has on the other. So things like this, that the science of collection is fascinating.
Yeah, there's a whole. I mean, it's such an interesting area, I guess, and even again to go back to the world of formal archival world, would say that an archive is not a collection. You don't go out and collect these things. You just receive them from the state, receive them from the Department of State or an organisation or something like that. You don't go out and decide it's a good idea to collect this, whatever. It kind of goes against formal archival principles. But the collectors here are actively creating the records that they're harvesting from the people, and then just think of the like you're saying, the context, what's being created, I suppose, between the collector and the person with whom they're working. Bill Egan is a guy that we had on a few of the episodes from the Midlands. I think he's from Westmeath, and Jim Delaney collected a lot from him, but they became great friends as well. There was a wonderful friendship between them. that comes across in lots of the recordings as well. There's a great joviality and a kind of an informality, but Bill had amazing kind of store of local knowledge and lore as well. And I found a beautiful photograph of them. By the way, you were looking the other day for a recording with the sound of birds on it.
Oh,
and
yes.
I thought it was who did I mention? Was it
Junior
Junior Crean? It wasn't. It's Bill Egan.
Oh,
and it's in his his farmhouse, and you can hear these birds kind of.
in
It must be the
background.
summer. They're flittering around outside. It sounds beautiful. But I found a beautiful photograph of Jim Delaney and Bill Egan in Bill's yard, and it's down some little rural kind of country lane. It's a black and white photo. It's obviously kind of, in the summer or something like that. And Bill's is making a rope out of straw.
Oh,
So the two of them are standing across each other in the yard.
Oh, casting
but
two
they're
line?
they're connected by this straw rope. It was a lovely symbol for the two of them,
friendship.
the friendship, but as well as the collector and the informant. So it's there's a huge there's a very interesting dynamic. Rian Yoga, the former director here, has done a huge amount of work on that idea of context and
Yes.
subtext and
That you kindly recommended to me. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a great article to read, because it gives you such an understanding that you're not just looking at the text that you look at when you come into the archive here, but you're looking behind it to the context, and then looking within it for the subtext as well. Really, really interesting. It just kind of shows you this rich stream that you can investigate, that you're kind of only getting one view at the text, and then
Yeah.
you have to start asking questions about why was this one offered, how was it given, how was it shaped by the informant's background, the collector's background,
the
by
occasion
the
on which it
social
was
occasion.
recited.
Exactly.
Which, and as though we had planned it, leads us into a neat segue of everything that you want to talk
Lovely.
about.
We finally nailed it after 20 episodes.
Yes, we
Jonny.
have.
The idea of context is beautifully, I suppose, represented by the Collectors Diaries, which is one of the last things, the kind of last little mini collections that I wanted to highlight that people might not know about. We've written about it this month for the Cultural Heritage Unit blog, so you can read a little bit more about them, but they're also freely accessible here in the archive as well. And essentially what they are was, from 1935 onwards, the Commission advised all full-time collectors to retain or to kind of create daily personal diaries, if you like, alongside the manuscript material that they would create and collect from informants. And what the diaries were meant to do was to record the atmosphere in which the work was undertaken. This is what Sean O'Sullivan wrote about. And he was very much kind of, it seems, influenced, as you kindly showed me in that article, Jonny, by the work of the Ordnance Survey field workers. So the likes of John O'Donovan and Eugene O'Curry and George Petrie, when they were collecting in the mid-1800s, they also kept diaries and kind of really captured the context of who they were speaking to, where they were working, what was happening. And so the Commission saw the likes of this, saw its value, and also they were obviously heavily influenced by the Scandinavian practitioners in folklore collection who were miles ahead of them, who always knew the value of context, that in order to understand the material that you were collecting, you had to understand the context in which it emerged. So as Dr. Rian Yoga writes in that article you mentioned, Jonny, she writes that any single item of folklore must remain at best bare, isolated and unrelated if it is kind of captured without this context that encircles it. So what you see in the diaries, we have over 120 of them when I went to count the cards, which is fascinating, from our full-time collectors. And as I'll just read a little quote. I love a quote. So my last few quotes of the episode.
Get them in, Claire.
Get them in. As Sean O'Sullivan writes in a paper that he gave at the 4 Symposia of Folklore in Indiana.
There was the mid-century folklore conference. Amazing.
It's fascinating when you
it's
read
really
that.
interesting. Yeah.
So rich in terms of all the various articles. But speaking about kind of the diaries, Sean O'Sullivan in 1953 writes, owing to the nature of the work, the diaries would fall into 2 types. The days when he was writing at home, he, being the collector, would just mention that in a couple of lines. But on the nights he went out to visit an old storyteller for the first time, or to do recordings, he might devote perhaps 20 or 30 pages of his diary to a description of the whole atmosphere of the house. How he went there, who gathered around, who was in the house, how he questioned the old man, what kind of person he was physically or otherwise, and tell how he got the tales recorded. Now those diaries will, I think, be of great use later when our tales will be published. And time and again, when you're looking through, when I was kind of doing a bit of research on the diaries, you just see the value that's contained in them, even in the most throwaway lines. So you've got Michael Murphy, working in the north of Ireland, and he captures so much of that kind of tempestuous political upheaval at the time, kind of in the run-up to and during the Troubles.
The army coming into his house, destroying his collections.
Yes, the helicopters going overhead just to create that disturbance amongst people. All of this kind of, and the people, he writes so movingly about the 19-year-old son of my neighbour has been killed in an explosion with another young fellow on a landmine. And he writes, the gloom of such an event falls like the ash of a great mountain fire on everyone. So there he is.
That was in the Collectors Diaries.
Yeah,
amazing.
So there he is, kind of speaking about the very formal work of collecting and going out and speaking to people and collecting information. But there's so much social context and historical context that they gather unknown to themselves almost in them. You've got lovely ones from Sean Ahoy, and the one I love, he writes very, and it is like a throwaway comment at the end of one in 1940 where he's saying, nothing much happened today, just a few planes overhead that scared the old people. And then full stop.
Oh, right.
But actually, when you think about it, it's the war. So when I looked up, apparently there was RAF airfields in Fermanagh that would fly across the border, and actually some RAF planes came down in Donegal off the coast, so that we actually still have the remains out there.
And Germans in Wicklow.
This is it, you know. So all of this that you can, we think planes now, you're like, oh yeah, that'll be the Carrickfinn airport, but it's not. Like, this is wartime, and in such quiet villages, you imagine what that must. No wonder they were wondering what they were, you know, because they weren't as common, and that this was, although we were neutral, the effects of war were still being felt. So there's so much kind of in the historical, political element of the diaries, and then they've got these wonderful little aspects where they might include photographs, or they might include sketches, or just these wonderful little kind of vignettes, if you like, about local characters and local events that may have nothing to do with a particular, you know, piece of folklore that someone's telling them. They're just observing that this is what life is like at that time. But especially what I think might be of interest not only to local historians who will like that aspect, but for family historians as well. I love that the collectors go into quite a lot of detail, as Sean said, about describing the person. So if you know that someone from your family gave information, you can come into the archive, look up their name, find their entry in the manuscript. Each piece should be prefaced with a kind of metadata label telling you the date that they were collected from. So then you can go and see if the collector has a diary that encompasses that date.
That evening when he went to collect.
And then you can go and see if it gives you another insight into your relative or the person he was collecting from. Because Sean Ahoy would have gone to my granny's granddad, who she often spoke about. But I love, like, he gives a really thorough discussion about the day he goes to see him. But, like, to an ordinary person it means nothing, but to us, like, it's just, he tells us what he looks like: blue eyes, big beard, like shoulders as wide as a bed, that he was prone to swearing, which is hilarious, as my grandmother was not. And when they were driving up to the house, that this big gaggle of children came out, and I imagine maybe potentially one of those could have been like my grandmother, or that he describes using the Ediphone, and that how he kind of would say to the Ediphone, God, you've got a great memory, like literally to the machine. And then he writes so like, it just
That's
really
just brilliant.
paints a picture. But the bit that I love, and I think this is why I like Sean Ahoy as well, at the end of his last meeting with Thomas Atlina, who would have been a kind of a relative of ours, he writes, it's in Irish, so I'll read it, but then I'll give you a quick translation. Vi grim lewe gadam agus richen amma fad agus vi shagin shodu agus ni grim fuer riche vi on a han grim farul shin is dooled on the shandini bre chriha sho a reh lew a hanine a motion dictort a man of difa an grimshin a higamach on chri agus the ag mart leis na shandini agus leis na shanre fod na tira homai agus the ten shanahas agus gas short a wanyan leis lenar golter gaela ag mart loha go godji gia lohalig. Which is this, it's so, like, some of our collectors, they really were writers and artists. So this is Sean Ahoy saying that at the end of the evening, after he'd been to see him a few times and collected material from him, he had held his hand to say goodbye, and that kind of he was saying whatever those last words were, but that he held his hand the entire time, and that it wasn't just any handshake, but it was the heartfelt, manly handshake that the old people had at that time when they were kind of taking leave of people, and that he was saying that such things are going with the old men and old women, as well as so much of the culture, the Gaelic culture that of Ireland, if you like. May God help them all. And I just thought, oh, isn't that just so, as a little vignette, it captures the person, it captures the society that's changing, it captures the collector's view of the importance of his own mission and his own work, and all of that in the diary that you won't see in the manuscripts.
No.
So you can go to this person and see that he gave maybe local lore or Fenian tales, but all of this also exists. So it's important, if people haven't kind of realised, that we also have diaries, and that potentially there might be something of interest for family history or local history.
That's beautiful.
It is. It's so nice. I have to say, it's one of my favourite collections that we've discovered.
The diaries are something that I must admit I'm very I haven't drawn on in my time here particularly at all. They're like a blank space to my mind in many ways, apart from published pieces on them. But Michael Jay's stuff is incredible. You can just open it, it reads like a book.
And he
straight
was
away.
A journalist, wasn't he, or at least a
He
fiction writer
was
as
writing,
well.
He was, yeah. He was writing for papers, yeah.
You can tell, but even it's just enjoyable. Like, he's so literary, and even like just the beautiful way he articulates emotions, and it's not just someone who's writing for the sake of writing. He enjoys language, and yeah, it's beautiful. It's really enjoyable to read his stuff.
It goes back again to what we're saying about Bill Egan and Jim Delaney and Sean Hood, like the impact that the people had on the collectors, and that the kind of the love that they had or displayed for them, or the inspiration that they caused, and that it isn't just this kind of cold, mathematically impartial and objective collection here at all. There's a huge emotional resonance to all the material. Take for example, what was that gentleman who was here the other day when Eamon was in, who was doing his study, and this guy came in he found material on his grandfather, and it turned out at the same time in the reading room, unbeknownst to one another. So this man came in and he was doing research on material from his grandfather, I think.
That's right, I think so.
And he couldn't read the translation. He couldn't read the material in the manuscript in Irish, but there was another visiting researcher in with us who happened to be working on all of that material, had transcribed it all, was able to translate it for him, and so the guy who's coming in for his grandfather had photographs of the man, and the man who'd worked on the material had never seen him, and so they're able to share with each other. But it had the diary entries, and there was reference to this man's grandfather and his aunt, the man's aunt as well, being in the house as a child. So, but the
I love those moments of serendipity in the archive when people chat.
Do you remember when the two women who took part in the schools collection came in on the same day unannounced?
Yes.
Remember that? Insane.
Very bizarre. There are certain days here where you just think the fates are lining,
Yeah, one does.
So strange.
I'm reminded of, for Sean O'Hoig's thing here, of the one book I do have here, Sean O'Connell, and it's again a neat segue as if we'd planned it. But Sean O'Connell, from Kilreelig in southwest County Kerry, was the individual really who inspired the Largy to save Ireland's folklore in its entirety as he viewed it. He went to Kilreelig in Kerry to learn Irish in 1923, and while he went there he met Sean O'Connell, who was a man who had a great store. He had the high artistry of the kind of multi-episodic complex folk tales and hero tales, material from the Finn cycle and local legends, prayers, all sorts of material, huge amount of different items. But he had a huge inspirational effect on him in kind of carrying out his collections down there. But he notes about him, if I can find it here, he says, Sean O'Connell understood what I wanted. This is in the foreword to the text from Delargy's writing about going in to collect this material. He was a man of old-time nobility with great respect for the oral tradition of the past generations. If I was eager to write down his folk tales lest they be lost, he was as eager to give them to me and to encourage me in the work. And he carries on there saying that he remembered that every time Delargy was about to leave, that O'Connell would start with a really long hero tale, and then he'd say, well, take the start of that down, come down again, I'll give you the rest of it. But at the end then, he says, so in describing that event, he says, from that recording and compilation came the inspiration to do my utmost to support whatever attempt can be made to collect the folklore of all the Irish people before it disappeared forever. And so it's the impact of those individuals that then kind of, I suppose, has such a force then to not just to save the material of one person, but then to save the material or to highlight the importance of all of our folklore or traditions as a people, or as people in general, wherever you're listening to this, or in Ireland and England and America, wherever across
or
Europe,
Vladimir in Russia.
Indeed. to be proud, be so proud of your forebears, your the people who come before you, and their imaginative kind of artistry and so on.
Absolutely.
It's it's so important. But will we wrap it up towards
Yes, the
this?
poor loyal listeners, we've probably lost quite a few of them.
Nonsense.
It's now an hour and 5 minutes. Yes, let's.
Will we play to finish the last piece? Is also the first piece that we started with of audio.
Oh yes, one of my favourites.
The Eternal Return. The circle is complete.
It's true. Can I just say?
So we're just going to play this one piece. Yes.
Can I just say goodbye before we finish?
Oh, of course we will.
Perfect.
We will, of course. Yes.
Oh no, are we doing it now, or do you want to do it afterwards?
No, we can do it now. So I was going to just introduce the
quite
piece
nice.
and then say goodbye.
Oh, but it's quite nice to finish with Delargy.
We'll just finish it, Larry. Yeah, so we'll do our goodbyes now.
Yes, that's what I said at the beginning.
What? When? At the beginning of the episode?
Just now.
Oh yeah, no, I know, yeah. But I wasn't going to just start and play it there.
Okay.
Oh, good grief.
Lord,
It's been a difficult, however many years it's been, and it's been arduous. We
Not
stopped talking to
listening
each
to
other
me,
a
but
long
anyway.
time ago.
My mouth is moving, Johnny, but obviously something is not going in.
I'm sorry, did you say something?
So I just wanted to say that I've loved every second of it, even in all the mad preparation and the last minute bullet points that we create the day before. But to everyone who's emailed and showed enthusiasm for the Blúiríní Béaloidis podcast, to people who've actually gone to the trouble of visiting when they're here in Dublin, or even those who've come from abroad and have popped in. It's meant so much to us. We've loved meeting you. We hope you found us on a day where we were in our happy place and not grumpy, and that we made you feel welcome. But please do keep listening. Jonny is going to be terrific, as always, and it's going to be, do stick with Blúiríní, because we've created it with the aim to kind of create a window through which you can view materials or discover materials in the archive, even if you can't come and visit, and to dispel those myths that are kind of that stock folklore, which I hope we've done to some degree. So keep using your local libraries, your archives, and appreciating the riches that they have. Get out there and collect material as well, because I hope we've shown in our romantic sense that it is important. The stories that we hold, every bit as important as the parliamentarians and the presidents and the statesmen and women. So collect your own material, and stay in touch with Blúiríní. Look after Jonny, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Delighted. Can we hug on the radio?
No,
Give us a shot,
they
you
don't even
Claire.
see us,
Come on,
Jonny.
come on, give us a go, yeah.
Oh Lord!
Delighted.
There you go. Ah, buddy, I'll miss you.
Yeah, I mean, you too.
Yeah, right.
It's,
Okay.
no, I totally will. What am I going to do? What the hell am I going to do? I was
Grand.
first when you were like, I was like, oh, I can't do Blúiríní without you. But I think I'll have to just.
Oh, have you gone on that journey after 24 hours? Like, yeah, that's grand.
24 minutes, I'd say. But it just it's trying to provide a window for people to just open up the collections and try and, like you were saying, dispel some of the myths, or just show the depth of the material, that it's not just this kind of throwaway material to be kind of.
Folklore is
at,
about
you know what I
more
mean?
than fairies. If nothing else, folks, take that away from me.
That's your tagline, yeah.
That is it.
But no, it's been an absolute crack, a total pleasure, delighted. But yes, keep using, like you're saying, local archives and collecting, and be proud of where we come from and so on, and realise that it's a living force, it's a living thing. It's not some brittle and dry kind of fossil from the past, whatever.
Exactly.
Unlike ourselves.
Speak for yourself.
Indeed.
Although I was a bit creaky there for the last few weeks, but touch wood, I'm alright.
You were, but I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll survive.
Keep doing the physio.
Yeah. But well, yeah. All I can say is thanks so much to yourself.
And
Totally
you, buddy.
delighted. A pleasure.
Yeah.
I shall miss you
My brother
indeed.
from another mother.
Indeed. Okay. Before the mascara's running all over the place here,
Yes.
shall we?
Leave you with the great forebear.
Indeed.
That was James Hamilton Delargy, Seamus O'Delarga.
And his whole, the impetus for starting the whole mess that has us here now. Right?
But we wouldn't be here without him in many ways.
Oh, absolutely not.
You know,
Total
it's
legend.
kind of-
Absolute hero.
Yeah.
Okay. This is Seamus O'Delarga, and this is us signing off.
Lovely. More hard to.
Slán.
Rahegus Blahera Vagoni.
Right.
See you later, buddy.
I realised that the old house was on fire, you know. It was about time some of the furniture was taken out before the whole thing went up. In other words, the civilization which had lasted here, Gaelic civilization, which had lasted here for so many centuries, that now it was disintegrating. So that I suppose the desire to save, the urge to save, a burning urge to save. And I have done something in that regard, and I feel glad have done, but I feel sorry too, because I realise how little I have done, and how little we in the Irish folklore have done, compared to what there was to be done.
So it can be Blúiríní just like from an angle.
Has that been the legal team signed off on that?
Yes, I'm completely happy with that.
Yeah, no, we'll work something out. But it's just it'll be weird.
I know, but it'll just be different. But then you'll get into the hang of it, like you know. But it's nice that we have this little.
I feel like it won't be
creation.
grounded to planet Earth in the way that it quite was.
Well, without the old
Colour-coded
cards,
yeah.
no, it won't be. But anyway.
Right, that's us. Any other? I think I'd like for this one a photograph of me and you
Oh, Jonny.
for the SoundCloud thing. It's just a photograph.
No, Jonny, I hate photos.
I won't. It's my only command.
No, Jonny, this is all about me. I don't like photographs.
Come on,
No,
one photo.
no.
Either that, or I'm putting up the one that RTE used before of me and you. Come on, it's the only one. We'll just be standing here amongst the books.
Can we do like a black and white one or something?
Perfect.
Right.
Right.
Do you have to do it now?
We can do it whenever.
Oh, right, okay.
Right.
Right. Big trauma to my heart.
And then if you can
I
look,
was getting
if
my
you
hair
can look
cut on
pained,
Friday.
if you can look a bit emotional, sad, and I'll be
Just
there
one
trying to
solitary
one
tear.
side cheer, and then it'll zoom in on that, and it'll be done.
Oh Lord.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Are we still recording, Jonny?
We're not anymore. Hold on. We're not anymore. Hold on. We're not anymore. Hold on. We're not anymore. Hold on.